Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I am Jade Vanriel. I'm a property, interiors and lifestyle blogger, and my main focus here is to help other first-time buyers buy property, particularly in the UK, but of course these tips can be used across the world. Today I'm talking about what it was like for me as a Londoner, born and bred, moving and buying a property in Essex. I'm sharing average property prices across the county, what to expect, what to look out for, and so on. Now before we get into it, I ask that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future amazing videos that I share, and also give it a like so I know that you enjoyed this. Leave a comment down below and let me know what was helpful for you and whether you are planning to buy a property in Essex. So firstly, I want to clarify that Essex is not a set area. It is a county just on the outskirts of London, our beloved city. And I have to stress this because I am from London, so I have family who are Londoners, born and bred. And when they discuss Essex, they kind of talk about it like this one place. For example, my family for some reason seem to think that I live down the road from Lakeside because I live in Essex, but I don't. I live about 35 minutes away from Lakeside, and yes, the county is quite large. There are various areas within it. For example, there's Thurrock, which consists of Grays or Purfleet or South Ockendon. And then there's sort of West Essex, which is like Harlow or Epping and Ongar, you know, and then there's Chelmsford, and then there's Braintree. And then you have the like Golden Triangle, which is like Chigwell, Buckhurst Hill and Loughton. Those places tend to be classed sometimes as London, but they are actually within the county of Essex. So my favourite topic, as you all know, is property and the prices of them. So Zoopla actually recently named 3 areas within Essex as some of the most desirable places that first-time buyers have been buying in. So I thought I would share those 3 places and share the average prices in them. The first one was actually Harlow, and I think that was in the top 5 areas. Harlow has a lot going on in the area. There are shopping centres, cinemas, transport links to Stansted, transport links to London, to Cambridge, to, you know, Westfield, Stratford. There's a lot going on around it, and you're not far from Epping, which is also an underground station. And the average property price there is £275,000. Another part of Essex that was really deemed affordable and loved by first-time buyers, according to Zoopla, was Thurrock, which, like I said, consists of places like Grays, Purfleet, Ockendon and so on. And the average property price there was £280,000. What's great about Thurrock as well is you've got Lakeside there. That is what everyone knows when they think about Essex, right? You've got Lakeside, you've got the C2C trains that get you in to London within half an hour, 20 minutes. You're not far from Dagenham. You're also not too far from Kent as well, so if you had family in Kent, you're just going over the Dartford crossing and you're over in Kent. And the third hotspot, according to Zoopla, for first-time buyers was actually Basildon, and the average property price in Basildon is about £270,000. So all pretty affordable when you think about it as the average price. So some things to note if you are a Londoner trying to buy or move out of London and live in Essex. Essex isn't London, okay? So you can't expect it to be like London. For example, when I first moved to Essex, there was barely any Ubers, okay? I remember having to actually just call up local cabs to take me to the station or wherever I was trying to get to. And there were Ubers, sometimes you'd have to wait half an hour or more for your Uber to come just to do a 5-10 minute journey. Now over the years that has definitely changed. I mean I've deleted Uber off my phone now because I used to spend too much on it, and now I'm driving, which is also another tip. If you live in Essex, driving is almost very essential, more so than living in London, but I digress. So yes, Ubers now, they're a lot more common. So what I would say is to take your time and be patient with wherever you're living in Essex. It may not have everything that you're used to when you first move there, but I do believe that everywhere across Essex, over a couple of years of you moving there, will actually develop. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. That is definitely because there's been an influx of younger people like us who are, you know, looking to buy homes now, and we're moving out of London for affordability reasons, and we're commuting into London. So it means the demand for Ubers, for Uber Eats, for Deliveroo, it becomes huge. You know, there are families, especially when it comes to ethnic minorities, we are moving out to these smaller areas or unheard of areas when we're, you know, always been in London our whole lives, our families have, and so the demand moves. Another example is, you know, my local Afro-Caribbean cosmetics and food shop, you know, where I can buy my yam and banana and okra, but I can also buy my gel and my extension hair and all of that. There is a couple around me now, but when I moved here, there was 0. So if that is important to you, you want to look at what shops are close by to, you know, the areas that you are looking at. When it comes to like takeout and restaurants, first of all, I'm a Londoner, but I've always been quite a particular person. I don't just eat at any random takeaway. I have a set takeaway that I know that my mum or my family have always eaten at for years, and that's it. When it comes to my Chinese or my Indian, even my Caribbean food shops, you can't trust everywhere, okay? And I'm a Caribbean, right? Now, I would say in Essex, you are limited in terms of those ethnic food shops and takeaways, okay? And if you do have them, there's often like a fish and chip shop with a mix of Chinese. But when you are a Londoner, you are really sport for choice in terms of, am I gonna have Thai today? Am I gonna have Indian today? And you know, they are good, highly rated places that you are used to and that you can trust, right? So, again, research is key. Now, of course, you do have, you know, the typical sort of high street chain restaurants like your Nando's, your Pizza Expresses and those kinds of things. You will have those close by if you are near sort of a bigger town. Some of the bigger towns would be like I said, Thurrock, where you've got Lakeside, so you've got a lot of those restaurants in Lakeside. Harlow has its own shopping centre, so you'll have a lot of those kind of restaurants and chain food stores there as well. Chelmsford is another place with a shopping centre that would likely have those restaurants. And then if we're talking slightly towards the edge of Essex, we could say Romford, because Romford is London, Essex, don't really know, but there's a shopping centre there that has those restaurants and things like that. You've got your Nando's and stuff. But there are obviously loads of pockets across Essex that won't have those things close by. You do have them, you might not have it everywhere, and you might have to wait a little bit longer or travel to them. Now let's talk about transport. The majority of Essex will not have an underground station, it will be an overground station. It might be Greater Anglia train or C2C, that kind of thing, and those trains tend to come into the London hub stations like Liverpool Street, Fenchurch Street. But on the cusp of the Essex and Greater London borders, you will have some areas that do have undergrounds, like Epping, like Hornchurch, like Dagenham, Upminster. But what I have found is actually these overground trains, they may not be coming every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes like the underground. They might come every 10, 15, 20, in some places half an hour. But they are quite quick because a lot of them are faster trains. Well, you can get fast trains, but you can also get longer trains that stop everywhere. But the faster trains can be like half an hour into London, obviously depending on where you're located in Essex. And I often get to central London quicker than my mum, who lives in northwest London. So, just putting it out there, transport isn't that bad. The only other thing I would say about the transport is, of course, certain places for, like, you know, the travel cards or even just a day travel card from these overground stations, they can be quite costly, and they don't accept Oyster card or contactless with your card. You have to like buy a paper ticket and that kind of thing. Try to find some links for you guys to check out like the average sort of prices of travel, but I think it's one of those things, isn't it? You can pay more on travel, but you'll pay a lot, considerably less, on the property. And also I would say that you do have a bit more of a nice quality of life. Me living in Essex now, I actually don't think I would move back into London, at least not permanently. Maybe I would have a London residence as well as a residence outside of London, like in Essex or Hertfordshire or Kent or wherever, but I wouldn't move back into London permanently. And I say that now because, boy, as I said, most of my family, they're also in London, and I know family members that want to move out because they're realizing when they visit me just the peace and quiet that I have, and the green spaces, and the fact that there are so many parks and things close by, and it's so peaceful. Like, I live in a flat and it's so peaceful. A lot of London flats that might be equivalent to what I live in, you would have a completely different experience and you would probably hate it, right? There's places that I can walk my dog literally on my doorstep, and it's just something that I would say Essex has over London. Not every area of London, obviously. If I think about where I grew up in northwest London, Mill Hill or Colindale or Hampstead, yes, they are more suburbia, so you will have a lot of green spaces and parks, but it wouldn't be like Essex just because of the infrastructure and the way London is built to the way Essex is built. A lot of areas within Essex were actually built post-war, or at least there was an influx of people from London actually who were moved there post-war. A lot of the towns in Essex were built to basically house people because of the London housing shortage. Isn't it crazy though that we're currently, again, I would say, in a London housing shortage, and we've still got these areas that people are still scared to move to? And I get it, especially if you're an ethnic minority. You want to stay in places that you feel safe, which brings me on to my next point. Race, ages, and just the kind of people that I've encountered living in Essex. I would say there are two completely different, they're either on this end of the spectrum or they're on this end of the spectrum, let me be real. Most of the time though, I have experienced people in the more positive end of the spectrum, living here 4.5 years. Wow, it's gone by quick. But there have been occasions where I've encountered some people on the bad end of the spectrum, i.e. they're a little bit funny about people of other races. I would say my experience of being in Essex, I found personally there are a lot of older people. Now obviously across London there's going to be young, old, etc, and that's obviously because those people would have moved out from London and maybe they were always here and they have stayed here their whole lives, right? They're used to it being a certain way, they're used to a certain kind of person that looks like them, and of course because of the London shortage of housing, people like myself are moving to these areas that we didn't look at before. The furthest that my parents would look at was like Enfield, and Enfield at the time for them was out of London, it was far. Now Enfield is considered London, right? So obviously over the years London and what's considered London tends to spread. It's just what happens because we move out and because of the demand and because of transport links and all of that good stuff. Giving you a little bit of a history lesson here. So yeah, they are a lot older. They tend to be obviously white. UK is predominantly a white country, so that's expected. And a lot of people are really nice. For example, when I walk Richie in the mornings, I will see people jogging past me or older people that will make sure that they say good morning to me. I lived in London my whole life and I barely experienced that. Unless you knew the person, they would say good morning. Or if it was like an old Jamaican lady, you'd say good morning because you know you have to say good morning to mum. But it wasn't really the norm to say good morning and things like that to a random person. I find that people do tend to like spur up nice conversation. People are quite polite. On the other hand, yes, you do get some people who are a bit standoffish or might assume things about you because of what you look like and might be taken aback when you open your mouth and they realize, oh, you're not from here, you're a Londoner. And they might even have the view of these Londoners coming and buying property, but hey, we are, because we need somewhere to live. But what I would say is don't let that stop you from buying, you know, your dream home that you can afford, that has everything that you've ever wanted. Because just by you moving there, for example, I am the only black person in my block of flats, right? And at first I did have one or two people that I felt were a bit weird, a bit standoffish with me, and we've had a few things go on in the past. But overall, I mean, I've just been me. They've seen me do me, and that's that. They then have to respect me and then start saying hello, because actually I'm not what they think I am, right? So I mean, I know that this is something that a lot of black people in particular do wonder about, and so this is my personal experience. Don't think it's never going to happen. You might experience it, but you probably will surprise yourself in that you won't experience as much racial issues as you thought you would, because times have changed, things have changed. We have more shops in these areas. We are, dare I say it, taking over a lot of areas in a positive way, and so people are used to us being here and it's normal, and we are respected, because really most people that do leave London to go to Essex are actually buying the properties rather than just moving, because we don't like to move to places we don't know for no reason, you know. So we're actually buying due to affordability at the top of, you know, the scale, right? So that is based off of my experience. Now I know there's going to be people that might have had horror stories or people that have never had any issues, and if you're talking about areas like Grays, for example, there is a lot of black people, so you would probably barely ever experience any, you know, racial or prejudice issues in places like that, just because there's a lot of people already that have settled there over the years. But if we're talking about somewhere like Basildon or Ongar or Colchester, there is less of us. But I think over the years, we have definitely started making our marks and moving due to affordability. So yeah, I would just say go to the areas, look around, research. If you're looking at a flat, for example, figure out who lives there and park outside in the car park and just see what kind of people are walking along the road, just to make yourself know what to expect when you move there. And again, just be nice to everyone, and you find that people end up being nice back to you. So that concludes the video. I hope it's been somewhat insightful for you and it's answered some of your questions. And yes, if you want to know more, I will leave some resources, some articles and things in the description for you guys to further read into areas and prices and things like that. But what I will say, top tip, is to research the area and find out what's coming to the area. That's something I always talk about, because there are a lot of new developments coming, which also means the demand is there and prices for your own property, if it's old, could potentially rise. Look into potential plans. Is there going to be a regeneration of the local shopping centre? Because that is something that brings your prices up. So just bear those things in mind. They might not be there right now when you want to buy, but maybe in 1 or 2 years you might be living as though you're living in London still. Anyway, that was really fun. That was really fun. I should have done this video ages ago. Let me know down below what other areas and places you want me to discuss, and make sure you subscribe to this video and share it with someone who you think might need to watch this.